Hello guys, welcome to another session. So here in this video, we will be talking about ethnicity and identity movement. Very important topic from your paper too. So they used to ask two questions from social movement. Out of 5, you will be getting 2 questions, and this is a very important area. You can score good mark also. So there are some years where they asked almost 50 mark from this. In fact, one came in the 10 marker and 2 came in the 20 markers each. So this is very important topic. Okay, so what we need to do here, guys, remember first this is a revision session, so I will not be discussing the way I discuss in the course. That's entirely different. There we will be covering everything. Here I'll be touching upon everything which you cannot afford to miss when you're writing the answer. So I'll be discussing in a perspective of 20 marker. So everything that I discuss here, you need to add in a balanced manner in your answer. If it's specific question on 10 marker, let's say identity movement, get into that and mention about that only. Okay. So here we'll talk about everything which is required from this particular topic, ethnicity and identity movement, keeping in mind that there's a revision session only to help you with the thinkers and the things that you need to cover in your answer. So you update with your notes in case if you are missing something from the courses that you have attended or from the mentors you have learned. So first you need to define ethnicity, right? And then you talk about sociological perspective on ethnicity. So you can talk about Max Weber. Even if Max Weber, it's an international perspective, but still you can talk about that. And then T.K. Oommen, Paul Brass, Ashish Nandi. Brass is very important. So these 4 thinkers you can mention when you introduce the sociological perspective on ethnicity. Ethnicity and identity movement is coming, but here we talk about ethnicity. And then talk about importance of identity in ethnic movements. Okay. And then discuss the causes of ethnic movement, like threat perception, or for example, Naga movement and insecurity. You can talk about Assam movement, discrimination, talk about Dravidian movement, marginalization, the Gorkhaland movement, and then the contradictory ideologies, Khalistan movement. So all these are, you can say, causes, and you can give examples, and you can write, a couple of good paragraphs with this. Okay, so I'm expecting that you know all this already. I'm expecting that you have covered the topic already. That's why I'm going through like this. But again, I'll repeat it with the actual content. Here, this just take it as an introduction to the session, actual session. Then talk about types of ethnic movement. A Paul Brass classification, right? Intra-ethnicity, inter-ethnicity, and state versus ethnicity. Intra means between or within the particular group. Inter means between 2 groups. The other one means you're looking for a separate state versus ethnic group. And then we can talk about Indian examples like autonomy movements. You talk about Ladakh and Gorkhaland movement. Separate state movement is there. Telangana and Punjabi Sabha. You can talk about secessionist movement, the Khalistan movement, and the Dravidian movement. Okay, and if you want to write the major ethnic movements in India, you can give these movements like Naga movement, Mizo movement, Dravidian movement, Khalistan movement, Gorkhaland movement, Assam ethnic conflict, and all these you can write with how the movement was there, how the organization was there, what the ideology. This is how you will be writing what the leadership, whether it is from within, whether it is from outside, what kind of ideology, Marxist ideology or nationalist ideology, or what ideology followed, and all those things we need to talk about. Coming to identity movement, define what is identity movement and talk about the types of identity movement. Like Wilbert Moore is giving, primordial versus modern identities. Discuss about that. And then historical evolution of identity movements in India, like religious identity movement, linguistic identity movement, tribal identity movement, like that. And then talk about the perspective on identity movement. There are modernization theory, primordialist perspective, as I mentioned just before. And you can also talk about the contributions of Dipankar Gupta, Ashish Nandi, D.N. Madan, and Samuel Huntington. So these are the thinkers which you can mention. And then you talk about ethnicity and identity movement in India, a critical analysis. You talk about that critical aspect. And there you talk about the relevance or significance of ethnic movement, challenges posed by this identity movements or ethnic movements, and balancing regional and national unity we need to mention. And then talk about the solutions and policy recommendations like promoting inclusive growth, strengthening democratic institutions, educating communities about diversity and unity. And finally, you will be concluding, there you can talk about ethnicity and identity movement as a reflection of socio-political dynamics and the role of sociology in understanding and addressing the ethnic conflict. So this is how you need to incorporate all the elements in your answer. So see guys, again, if it is a 20 marker, you need to add everything in a balanced manner. If it's a 10 marker specific to ethnic movement or specific to identity movement or the causes of this movement or ethnicity movements, then accordingly you need to write. Okay. So now let's start the session. But before that, if you're looking for the complete course or mentorship or test series for sociology, get in touch with us. The details are given in the description, and then you can get the PDF anyway free of cost. Check out the description. So guys, if you look at the definition, when we talk about ethnicity, it refers to the shared identity of a group, which is based on some common cultural elements such as language, religion, history, tradition, and region also. So all these, religion as an ethnicity, cultural dimension, again, you can consider it as an ethnic group. Language, region, tradition, any cultural element. It's all about a shared identity. So ethnicity means a shared identity of a group, which is based on some common cultural elements. Okay. Now talk about the sociological thinker's perspective. T.K. Oommen, according to him, ethnic groups share a history, tradition, and language. Ethnicity emerges as people mobilize to safeguard their economic, political, and social interest. Max Weber, ethnic groups are defined by subjective beliefs in shared ancestry, customs, or physical traits, and he highlights that ethnicity is socially constructed rather than biologically determined. Paul Brass, ethnicity, is a resource mobilized in the competition for political and economic gains. Okay, so Ashish Nandi, you can talk about modernization often lead to the resurgence of traditional identities, emphasizing the role of culture and religion in maintaining ethnic distinctions. Okay, now let's talk about the causes of ethnic movement. Threat perception, right? So as I told you already, example, you talk about Naga movement in Northeast India, driven by the fear of cultural and political domination. Insecurity, another cause. Talk about Assam movement against illegal Bangladesh migrants or immigrants due to resource competition. So there is an insecurity. Discrimination. Dravidian movement emerged against the perceived dominance by North Indian Brahminical culture. Discrimination. Now the next is marginalization. The Gorkhaland movement, which demands a separate state for the Nepali-speaking population in Darjeeling. And then contradictory ideologies like Khalistan Movement, driven by quest for Sikh homeland, fueled by political and religious conflicts. Okay, now let's talk about the types of ethnic movement. As we discussed, Paul Brass classification is the classic one. So that is intra-ethnicity, inter-ethnicity, and state versus ethnic group. So intra-ethnicity means conflict within a single group, like Shia Sunni in Islam. So within Muslim, there is two conflicting groups, right? That means intra. Inter means between, like inter-college festivals, like that. Okay, so conflict between two different ethnic groups, Kashmiri Muslims versus Pandits, like that. They are two different ethnic groups, two different cultural groups. Third one, the state versus ethnic group, the movement against the state domination, Naga, Mizo movements as the example. Again, if I want to give Indian examples again further, you can talk about autonomy movements, Ladakh and Gorkhaland. Separate state movement, Telangana, Punjabi Suba, as I discussed before. Secessionist movement, Khalistan and Dravidian movements. Okay, now major ethnic movements in India. Let's talk about this in a couple of sentences, each of this. Khalistan movement. That's basically demand for Sikh homeland in Punjab, triggered by religious and political issues, culminating in Operation Blue Star. And the key sociologist you can talk about is Dibankar Gupta, emphasizes the interplay of religion, identity, and politics here. Then Naga movement started for an independent Naga homeland. What's the outcome? Creation of Nagaland in 1963. Guys, when we discuss all these movements, there are different dimensions you need to mention, right? Social movement characterized by different dimensions. You need to talk about the leadership. What kind of leadership, whether from within or from outside? What kind of organization? What kind of ideology has been followed, right? What kind of mobilization was there? So all these need to be discussed in detail in each of these movements when we talk about. Mizo movement emerged from demands for autonomy due to cultural and linguistic differences, and that resulted in Mizoram attaining the statehood. Dravidian movement, that's led by E.V. Ramaswamy Periyar for social equality, and it was focused on anti-Brahmanism, linguistic pride, and social justice. Then Gorkhaland movement. So this basically demands a separate state for Nepali-speaking Indians in Darjeeling. So the leadership like Subhash Ghai Singh and later Bimal Gurung. Right, then Assam ethnicity conflict. That's a conflict between Bodos and Bangladesh immigrants over land and resources. Here, the tools like NRC, National Register for Citizens, were implemented to address the migration issues. Now, let's talk about identity movements. See, identity is how individuals or group perceive and express themselves, and it's often shaped by culture, religion, language, or class. So what are the types of, again, identity movement? We can talk about religious movements like, the demand for Pakistan, Linguistic, demand for linguistic state like Tamil Nadu. Tribal, that's a creation of Nagaland, Jharkhand. These are, types, okay? So perspective, if you see modernization theory. So identities will align with broader concepts like nationalism and citizenship in modern societies. Wilbert Moore, go through that, okay? Look at the PDF. I have covered everything, guys, in detail. Take out the PDF, read that, cover everything. Then primordialist. Primordial identities, if you see, they persist and can resurface even in modern societies. So the sociologist you can mention is Clifford Geertz. And Dipankar Gupta, for him, Indian identity movements transition from religious, for example, Pakistan, to linguistic, for example, Tamil Nadu, to tribal, for example, Nagaland. So the transition is religious to linguistic to tribal. Ashish Nandi, modernization has amplified identity consciousness as traditional cultures assert themselves against the homogenization. And T.N. Madan is talking about Indian modernity retains traditional identity markers like food, dress, and kinship. Samuel Huntington, the future conflict will be shaped more by identity differences than the ideological disagreements. Okay, now ethnicity and identity movements in India. Let's look at a critical analysis that we can do and check out the notes for complete analysis. So what's the significance? This reflect the tension between modernization and traditional values. And it highlight the regional, cultural, and economic disparities. What is the challenge? Threat to national integration. For example, Khalistan and separatist movement. The rise of political populism based on identity issues. What are the solutions? Promote inclusive growth and education, strengthen democratic institutions to mediate ethnic conflicts. Okay, so much of things we have covered. So guys, now let's conclude. Ethnicity and identity movements in India demonstrate the complex interplay between tradition and modernity. So what the challenge? The challenge lies in balancing regional and cultural autonomy with national unity. Sociological perspective that we discussed, the emphasis on understanding these movements as part of broader socio-economic and political processes. So expect these questions. What all things, if you ask me what we covered is, we defined ethnicity, we discussed the sociological perspective on ethnicity like Max Weber, T.K. Oommen, Paul Braz, and Ashish Nandi. And then we discussed about the importance of identity in ethnic movements. And we discussed the causes of ethnic movement like threat perception, insecurity, discrimination, marginalization, contradictory ideologies. And I gave you examples for each of it. And then we discussed the types of ethnic movement according to Paul Braz: intra-ethnicity, inter-ethnicity, and state versus ethnic group. And then we discussed few examples like autonomy movements, Ladakh, Gorkhaland, separate state movement, Telangana, Punjab, and then cessationist movement, Khalistan, Dravidian, like that. And we also discussed about the major ethnic movements in India like Khalistan Movement, Naga Movement, Mizo Movement, Dravidian Movement, Gorkhaland Movement, and then Assam ethnic conflict. Then we discussed about identity movement and we defined it. And then we have seen the types of movements like primordial modern identities by Wilbert Moore. And then we have seen the historical evolution also, like religious identity to linguistic identity to tribal identity, right? And then we have seen the perspective also like modernization theory, primordialist perspective. And we also look at the contributions of Dipankar Gupta, Ashish Nandi, T.N. Madan, Samuel Huntington. And we also discussed about ethnicity and identity movements in India, the critical analysis part as well. And then we discuss the solutions and we concluded. So this is what exactly we have done. So that's about the session, guys. I hope this session helped you for the revision of this topic. It's not the complete topic in itself, because this is actually a big topic which requires 2 days of discussion, and we did it in just 15 minutes, which means this is only to cover the most important areas that you're supposed to, or you're not supposed to miss if the question is asked. So I hope I did justice to the time that you spent with me on this topic. And I hope this helped you for the revision. And if you like the video, share it with your friends who are preparing with sociology. In case if you're looking for any mentorship or course or test series, get in touch with us. And the PDF you can download anyway. See you guys in the next session. Thank you so much.